Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are strapping in, I think is the right phrase. We're going deep into some pretty intense narrative territory.
Yeah, definitely not a light read we're tackling.
Definitely not. We're moving way past just a simple book summary. This whole deep dive is dedicated to really understanding the complex psychological machinery of Colleen Hoover's Verity. It's a book that really divides people, but it's undeniably popular.
Right, and when people hear Colleen Hoover, they often think romance, maybe emotional drama, which is fair. That's a lot of her work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the sources we looked at all agree Verity is something else entirely. It's stark, almost brutal, a real departure.
Absolutely. It's dark, it's twisting.
So our mission today is to basically pull apart its core structure, right? Look at the really shocking reveals and maybe figure out the psychological tricks it uses. Because it really does feel like it's designed to manipulate your perception, blurring that line between, a made-up story and something terrifyingly real.
Yeah, it's about how a narrative itself can mess with your head, how the story becomes the source of the horror.
Okay, so setting the stage, where does the source material position this, genre-wise?
Well, it's clearly labeled a psychological thriller, but the descriptions dig deeper, calling it a dark, mind-twisting story about truth, lies, and obsession. It blends romance, sure, but also mystery and this really heavy suspense.
So that dark mind-twisting part is key. It sets the expectation.
It does, and it signals that this isn't just Hoover trying something new. It's a deliberate shift into darker, creepier, genuinely disturbing territory. The narrative has to be complex, built to keep you constantly second-guessing.
It's like the story uses the reader's expectations against them.
Precisely. You're supposed to doubt the characters, obviously, but I think you're also meant to doubt the evidence presented within the story itself, like the documents. That's the core engine we need to explore.
Got it. And it starts with our protagonist, Lone Ashley. She's set up as quite vulnerable, right?
Yeah, she's a struggling writer, kind of adrift financially, maybe emotionally, too.
And then, bam, this incredible opportunity lands in her lap. The sources call it a once-in-a-lifetime job.
Which it definitely seems like on the surface.
She gets asked to finish a super successful book series by this huge author, Verity Crawford.
Right. The famous Verity Crawford.
But there's a catch, obviously. Verity herself can't finish it.
And that's the initial setup. Verity has had this terrible, tragic accident. She's incapacitated, can't communicate, basically non-functional.
So Lowen is essentially stepping in as a ghostwriter, or professional surrogate.
Exactly. The premise seems, well, sad, but stable, Verity's the victim, Lowen's the professional helping out. The job is clear. Finish the books.
That sets the baseline reality. Tragic, but understandable.
A baseline that the rest of the book is absolutely dedicated to shattering. If it had just stayed a ghostwriting job from afar, well, we wouldn't be talking about it like this.
Right. The story needs to put Lowen inside the pressure cooker.
Precisely. So the job requires Lowen to relocate. She has to move into the Crawford family home, which is, already kind of intense.
Yeah, talk about blurring professional boundaries immediately.
And the house itself. It's isolated, heavy with grief, obviously overshadowed by Verity's accident. The setting is crucial. It cuts Lowen off from her normal life, her support systems.
Plunges her right into their contained world.
Exactly. She's living there with Verity's husband, Jeremy, and their young son, Crew, constantly surrounded by the aftermath of this family tragedy.
So you have this weird contrast. She's there for a professional task, sorting notes and outlines.
But she's living in this deeply personal, grieving household. The tension is baked in from the start.
And it's while doing her job, sifting through Verity's office, that she finds something else, something not on the official task list.
Right. This is the pivot point. She's meant to be looking for notes for the fiction series. Business stuff, essentially.
But instead, she finds something deeply private and horrifying.
An unfinished manuscript. But not for the series.
No, it's an autobiography, written by Verity herself.
And that detail is critical. It's not official, not an outline, definitely not meant for Lowen, or maybe anyone, to see. It feels like a secret.
A private, unsanctioned text.
And finding this manuscript, that completely changes the game. It shifts Lowen's role immediately. She's no longer just a ghostwriter.
She becomes, what, a spy, almost?
Kind of, yeah. Or at least an unwilling voyeur. Subjective surveillance is a good way to put it. The sources are clear. This autobiography is the plot engine. It's where a version of the truth seems to lie.
A version? That's an important qualifier.
Definitely. But for Lowen, in that moment, finding it in Verity's private office, written in Verity's own hand, It feels like the real story.
It forces her to question everything she's been told about Verity, about the accident.
Think about the intent, right? She was hired to continue Verity's fiction, and she stumbles upon what seems to be Verity's raw, unfiltered, horrific truth. It's an accidental discovery that breaches every professional and ethical boundary.
And the setting makes it so much more intense, finding it there, in Verity's personal space.
It gives the document this immediate, almost undeniable authority for Lowen. Even though logically she knows Verity is a writer, someone who crafts narratives for a living.
Right. She should be the first person to question if it's just another story.
But that's the power of the format, isn't it? A secret, hidden autobiography feels inherently truthful. We're wired to believe confessions, especially private ones.
Even if the confessor might be unreliable.
Exactly. Lowen, the professional fiction writer, gets completely sucked in by the form of this confession. She trusts the manuscript, which makes her incredibly vulnerable to its contents.
It's a fascinating paradox.
Hmm.
She creates stories, but she implicitly trusts this one story she finds.
It shows how we separate confession from narrative. We assume one is raw truth, the other is constructed. But a confession is a construction, too.
And the contents of this particular construction, well, they immediately obliterate any sense of Verity as just a tragic figure.
Yeah, the sources confirm the manuscript details acts that are genuinely shocking and disturbing. Verity doesn't hold back in her own words.
But it's the specifics that really land the blow, isn't it? To grasp the psychological horror, you need to know what Verity allegedly confesses to.
Right, and the most devastating part, the detail the sources highlight, concerns the deaths of her twin daughters, Chasten and Harper.
She includes admissions about their deaths in the manuscript.
Yeah. This is the absolute point of no return. For Lowen, reading it, and for us, experiencing it through her.
You're holding what appears to be a mother's confession, related to the deaths of her own children. It's almost unthinkable.
It instantly shifts the story's genre, really, from maybe dark family drama or suspense into true psychological horror. It's not just betrayal, it's potentially monstrous.
And suddenly, Lone has to look at everything differently, right?
Hmm.
Her entire perception of the Crawfords, of Jeremy, of Verity lying upstairs, it's all recontextualized.
Completely. Every interaction, every piece of information she had before finding the manuscript now gets filtered through this new horrifying lens. She has to question Verity's accident.
Was it really an accident? Was it grief? Or was it...
Or, as the sources put it, something more sinister. Maybe a way to escape accountability. Or even self-inflicted for some other twisted reason.
So the core tension snaps into place. Is Verity a victim of unimaginable tragedy, the accident, the loss of her daughters?
Or is she the architect of those tragedies, and her current state is just another layer of manipulation?
That uncertainty poisons everything, especially her interactions with Jeremy.
Absolutely. And this brings us squarely to that first big theme the sources point out, the blurring of truth and fiction.
Because Lowen's job was to write fiction.
And instead, she finds this document claiming to be Verity's nonfiction, her brutal truth. But again, it's all just words on paper.
The manuscript becomes this dangerous counter-narrative.
Exactly. It's like a parallel text running underneath the surface reality of the house. Jeremy presents one story, tragedy, grief. But Lowen is constantly reading this other, secret story that rewrites everything.
Like a Gothic palimpsest you mentioned, where the hidden text bleeds through.
Yeah, the family tries to maintain this facade of normalcy, of tragic circumstance, but Verity's own alleged words keep undermining it. Lowen's trying to write this commercial fiction series while living inside a hidden horror novel.
And the irony of Lowen, the writer, being the one snared by this text.
It's perfect, isn't it? She understands how stories are built, yet she's immediately convinced by this one. It highlights how much weight we give to the idea of a secret confession.
We assume it must be true, ignoring that the person writing it might have complex motives, or might just be writing.
So Lowen's grappling with this monumental secret, right? This manuscript detailing the fate of the twins. And while this is happening, something else is developing, something complicated.
Her relationship with Jeremy.
Exactly. They're living together, working together in this intense, grief-stricken environment. The sources note their relationship turns intimate.
Which just ramps up the stakes astronomically.
It's the catalyst for her real moral dilemma, I think. She's falling for Jeremy, developing real feelings.
While suspecting his wife, the woman upstairs, might be a monster who harmed their children.
It's a horrific ethical knot. She's building a relationship based on withholding a truth that would absolutely destroy him. If she believes the manuscript, she's basically involved with the husband of a murderer, possibly.
Or at least someone who confessed to monstrous things. The intimacy compromises her completely. First, her professional integrity went out the window with finding the manuscript,
And now her personal integrity is shot because of the secrecy and the romance.
which leads to that central internal struggle for her. Guilt, fear. It must be overwhelming.
Absolutely. The core question becomes, should she tell Jeremy? Should she show him the manuscript?
Knowing it could shatter his entire world, his image of his wife, his marriage, maybe even implicate him somehow if Verity's accident wasn't an accident.
Right. It could open up a whole legal nightmare, too.
But the ambiguity of the manuscript, the fact that it's just a text she found, maybe gives her an out, a way to rationalize her silence.
I think so. She can tell herself he might not believe her. He might see her as jealous, manipulative, trying to drive a wedge using this questionable document.
Easier to stay silent and keep the relationship she clearly desires.
Which is a perfect example of that theme the sources mention, the dark side of love.
Hmm.
Her feelings for Jeremy cloud her judgment, make her unreliable even to herself.
She prioritizes protecting their potential future over revealing a potentially horrific past truth.
Is it love complicated by a secret, or is it a relationship fundamentally built on deception? A deception she frames as protecting him. It's messy.
And all this pressure, this secrecy, it starts to affect her more actively, doesn't it? She doesn't just sit with the secret.
No, she becomes obsessed. Obsessed with finding out the real truth. Is the manuscript accurate? Is Verity capable of those things?
So she starts watching Verity, looking for cracks in the incapacitated facade.
Exactly. And this leads to the central, terrifying suspicion, the one that gives the book its title.
She starts to suspect Verity is not as helpless as she seems.
Bingo! And this is where the story shifts again. It's not just about uncovering a past crime anymore.
It becomes about present danger, ongoing manipulation.
If Verity is faking, my God, the entire household dynamic flips. Her helplessness isn't a tragedy, it's a performance, a chillingly effective one.
Every conversation Lowen and Jeremy have, every intimate moment,
To be overheard, monitored by a conscious, aware, possibly malevolent presence just upstairs.
that elevates the theme of manipulation to a whole new level. Verity would be exerting total psychological control through perceived weakness.
It makes the house feel like a trap, an invisible cage built from Verity's supposed condition. She's potentially watching the woman who's falling for her husband right under her own roof.
It's incredibly creepy.
Hmm.
And in a twisted way, does it almost give Lowen a justification?
How do you mean?
Well, if Verity is faking, if she's this master manipulator, then maybe Lowen feels less guilty about Jeremy. Like, Verity deserves it.
That's a dark thought, but yeah. It could simplify Lowen's moral conflict. She's not a homewrecker. She's exposing a villain. It makes her actions feel righteous, maybe.
Protecting Jeremy from the real monster.
Okay, so the whole structure, the whole conflict, it all hinges on words on paper, right?
Yeah, the autobiography, primarily. There's
Yeah.
no smoking gun, no eyewitness. It's all about this text.
Which forces us right back to that theme, the power of storytelling and how words can deceive.
The manuscript is the proof, the evidence. But it could also be the ultimate lie.
Why do you think the author chose a written confession? Why not, say, a recorded message Lowen signs or overheard whispers? Why a manuscript?
Maybe because writing feels more deliberate, more permanent. It solidifies the narrative, gives it weight, makes it feel like fact, even if it's coming from Verity, who Lowen knows is a professional creator of fiction.
Right. It taps into the dark side of a writer's skill set. Can you craft a story so vivid, so disturbing that it passes as your truth, even if it started as therapy or fantasy or something else?
Like a weaponized narrative.
Exactly. And this brings in the whole unreliable narrator concept, but layered. Lowen is unreliable, right?
Mhm.
She's emotionally compromised, falling for Jeremy, maybe wants Verity to be the villain.
So she can justify her own actions and desires.
But the ultimate unreliable narrator is Verity herself. Is the manuscript a genuine, horrifying confession, or is it the most devastating piece of fiction she ever wrote, designed to inflict maximum damage or control?
We just don't know her intent.
And that's crucial, that confession about the twins. It's so dark, so specific, it acts like an anchor. Once Lowen reads it, she can't unread it. Her reality starts revolving around that single textual claim, whether it's true or not.
Which fuels her obsession.
Absolutely. It loops back to the obsession theme. Lowen's obsessed with the manuscript because her future with Jeremy depends on its veracity. Jeremy's obsessed with his grief, the weirdness of Verity's condition.
And Verity. If Lowen's suspicions are right,
Yeah.
she's obsessed with control. control over Jeremy, over her legacy, maybe using her darkest writings as a tool.
And that connects straight back to the dark side of love again. Obsession drives their actions. Lowen hides the truth, plays the lover. Verity, possibly driven by a twisted possessiveness, creates this horrifying text, either a confession or a psychological bomb.
And the isolated house just amplifies everything.
Exactly. There's no outside perspective, no reality check. It's just the official tragic story versus the secret written story. Whichever narrative feels more compelling, more powerful, wins.
And the manuscript, with those shocking details about the children, that's inherently compelling, isn't it? It overshadows the mundane, plausible tragedy.
Okay, so structurally, a thriller like this often needs a final shakeup, right? A twist.
Yeah, you expect something to flip the script at the end.
And the sources confirm Verity delivers on that. The ending apparently flips everything you thought you knew. That's classic psychological thriller territory, inverting the reality you thought you'd finally grasped.
And the mechanism for this flip, it's fitting, isn't it? It's another piece of writing.
Exactly. The sources are clear. A final letter emerges. And this letter challenges everything Lowen, and by extension, the reader assumed based on the autobiography.
So it's not just a twist for shock value. It's structurally necessary given the book's reliance on texts.
Right. The whole story built this tension. Public narrative, tragedy, versus private manuscript monster. Lowen is forced to pick a side. Then this final letter comes in and basically says, hold on, there's a third narrative. It shatters that binary choice.
How does it achieve ambiguity, though? Does it just offer a different story?
It seems like it replaces one potentially biased, unprovable text, the autobiography, with another equally biased, unprovable text, the letter. Both are emotionally charged. Both offer compelling but mutually exclusive versions of reality.
Both conveyed through writing by someone with a massive stake in the story.
Precisely. So you finish the book having been presented with two powerful, conflicting, horrific narratives, and no definitive proof for either. That's where the haunting ambiguity comes from.
The story doesn't actually tell you who the monster was.
No. It throws a question back at you. Was Verity a monster, or was she misunderstood? The psychological game continues even after you close the book.
Wow. So the burden of deciding what's real shifts from Lowen to the reader.
Exactly. The author deliberately refuses to give certainty. You, the reader, become the final judge. Just like Lowen had to choose whether to believe the autobiography or the letter, you have to choose which narrative feels more plausible, or perhaps which narrative you want to believe.
That really drives home the theme of reader agency. We want resolution, especially in a thriller. We want to know.
And by denying that, the book makes its point about subjectivity. Maybe the only truth that matters is the one you construct for yourself based on the conflicting evidence. The whole novel becomes this kind of psychological Rorschach test.
What do you see in these conflicting texts?
Right. If the autobiography is true, detailing the twins' deaths, it's a story about pure maternal malice. If the final letter is true, it's a story about calculated literary revenge, about fiction being used as a weapon.
And both possibilities are equally chilling.
Which is what gives it that lasting impact. It taps into that gothic feel again, the dark secrets, the trapped protagonist searching for truth. But the locked room isn't a room, it's a text. A text that's then challenged by another text. Hashtag tag tag outro.
Okay, so wrapping this up, this deep dive into Verity really shows how a seemingly straightforward setup, a ghostwriting job, can spiral into this brutal psychological investigation. And it's all triggered by finding that secret, horrifying manuscript.
Yeah. We traced Lowen's journey from that initial shock about the confessions, especially regarding Chasten and Harper,
Through the incredibly messy ethics of her relationship with Jeremy, built on that secret.
and landing on that chilling possibility that Verity was performing helplessness the whole time, manipulating everyone.
The big takeaway, structurally, seems to be the novel's complete dependence on written documents. They're both the evidence and the source of deception.
The manuscript drives the conflict, and then the final letter deliberately shatters any certainty the manuscript might have provided.
Which leaves us with a really provocative final thought, doesn't it? Building on that theme of the power of words.
Yeah, I think so. Since the entire story, the entire truth we're trying to find, relies on these two conflicting written accounts, the autobiography and the final letter.
Both written by people with huge biases, huge stakes.
Right. A potentially desperate writer, an alleged monster, maybe a vengeful partner. How can you ever really know the intention behind the words when the source is so compromised?
Especially when they claim they're telling the truth. Confession in fiction, on the page. can look identical.
So when the paper trail is this deliberately tangled by trauma, genius, maybe malice, which story do you, the reader, ultimately choose to believe?
A fantastic and frankly unsettling place to leave it. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the twisted mind games of Verity. We'll see you next time.